And now we are going to go to our panel discussion. Our panelists are Brent Loveless, Howard County Parent Teacher Association Council Legislative Committee Chair, Hiruy Hadgu, who is the President of Progressive Democrats of Howard County, Paul Verchinski, HoCo by Design Planning Advisory Committee member, and I'm going to give it over to Sarah Pan, who's going to moderate this discussion.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'll be moderating this discussion. Okay, so to start off, could you tell us what HoCo by Design and the general plan are, and why they're so important?
This is Paul Verchinski. I'll try to field that question. We have done general plans since 1960. And in fact, the general plan is required by the state of Maryland, usually to be updated every 10 years. And it guides basically the land development within the county. Now, one of the things that people forget about when it comes to Howard County is that we're the second smallest county in the state of Maryland, and we currently only have 5% of our land available for new development. That is what is referred to as greenfields, where nothing's been built on before. So this particular plan is looking at rehabbing and retrofitting for the next 10 to 20 years. So that's kind of it in a nutshell as to why we're here and why we're doing it.
And Sarah, are you gonna pick people?
Awesome.
Or
do any of the panelists? Oh, sorry.
No, I'd like to just add to Paul.
I'll be asking everyone mostly, unless if I say your name specifically. So anyone's welcome to chip in for any of the questions, even if I name someone specifically.
All right. I just wanted one point. Paul brings up an excellent talking point that we hear throughout the general plan, that there's only 5% of green space available to develop. Quite honestly, there's 100% of Howard County left to develop. They're going to go through the comprehensive rezoning plan, and rural areas, preservation areas, anything is fair game for additional development throughout this process. So it isn't that we've run out of land, it's that the land use is about to change to keep the growth mechanisms going in the county. And that's a very important item. And real quick, while on that point, a lot of people do bring up the preserved areas. Some areas in state preservation do have semi-permanent easements, but other areas in county preservation areas expire after, I think it's 25 or 30 years, which basically means that there's a lot of land free for development as the county preservation system ages out. Thank you.
Brent brings up an excellent point about Western Howard County. However, when we granted these ag preservation designations, the county was not forward thinking. In other words, they weren't planning. Well, let's put those and grant those in areas where we will not want to do new development. So you have a real big problem now in Western Howard County in development, because it doesn't make any sense to extend water and sewer if you can't get big enough pieces of land to do that with. And doing individual sewer systems or water systems is very expensive, and they have ongoing issues from everything that I've heard.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, oh, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add that I think why is it important? So what to me, another more important question is, why is it important to you? And I think it's important to you because it affects your money. So it affects taxpayer dollars, and Ultimately, the decision that's going to be made this year will have lasting ramifications on the county budget, and just like the previous general plans did, and we'll get into more detail in this later, but it has lasting ramifications on the county budget, potentially leading to massive deficits, increased debt, unless it's done carefully.
Yeah, Hiruy brings up an
Okay.
excellent point, because the fiscal analysis that was done, I think, was very deficient, and it glosses over a lot of major issues that Howard County has. And ideally, I would have liked to have seen all the assumptions in terms of where they expected to get money from, like for schools, like for roads. I mean, there's literally billions of dollars that they're assuming will not be borne by Howard County taxpayers, but will become monies that come in through the state or the federal government.
Okay, so just to move on to our next question for time, you guys have already touched on this point, but do you guys all want to talk about what you testified specifically at the previous general plan meetings and your general thoughts about the plan? For example, are there things that it gets right, if any, and what are the major flaws of it, as Paul has already talked about it?
I've said enough for now, so Hiruy or Brent, you want to go?
Yeah, I have to do the obligatory disclaimer, since I am on the board of the PTA Council. I am only representing myself here and not the PTA board, but you're going to see similarities because I help with them with their legislation and draft it, and we've recognized similar things, which is from a school point of view, yes, the financials are not there. They haven't been there, and we're repeating financials. And some of the positions we have, the PTA in and of itself is not for or against any particular type of housing. What they do insist on, and that's an important word, not suggest, insist on, is that we have adequate schools for the children as they approve development. And quite honestly, we don't have that right now. And following the same practices in ad nauseum in a repetitive loop here is not going to provide a better result. And usually the expectation is, and it is in the plan through the dismantling of APFO or alternate suggestions, to just simply reduce the quality of the schools, be it walk distances, bus times, size of school, programs offered, air conditioning, whatever. And eventually all that adds up, and you're seeing the initial cracks in the ice right now. And I'll stop on that because I could go for hours. Thank you.
So I think, I mean, there are a lot of flaws with the general plan, but I think the two big ones that come to mind is the county's assumption in its fiscal impact analysis that residential development pays for itself, and also this idea that an increase in supply of housing would have a significant impact on affordability. These two assumptions have sort of been the driving force for Howard County's planning, underlying planning purposes, and it has led to major ramifications on the budget and on the quality of infrastructure. So residential development does not pay for itself, and it should not have to pay for itself, because people just have a right to live in a house and benefit from the infrastructure, benefit from the facilities, and they'll pay their taxes, they'll pay the property taxes, and they'll contribute in some way to the budget. So this idea that it has to pay for itself has been, or the framing that it pays for itself has led to some major issues, and led to county leaders pushing for basically unmitigated growth. And that tied with the fact that increase in supply of housing leads to significant affordability has also had a major impact. And we've seen Howard County has had unmitigated growth for decades. The Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance was it's the tool that the county has used to mitigate growth, but it has been largely ineffective until 2018. It was extremely weak, and we can go into detail on that. But because it was extremely weak, Howard County has had unmitigated growth for years. Because of that, and we did not see this affordability improve in Howard County. And the reason is people come to Howard County for its infrastructure, for its schools and its roads. And so when you have quality infrastructure, it leads to increased demand. And so it doesn't necessarily have an impact on reducing affordability, and so it's that misleading assumption has led to make developers very wealthy, while the taxpayer has borne most of the consequences of this unmitigated growth, leading to unfortunately a lot of decline over the years. So I would say those are the two major flaws.
I would endorse everything that Hiruy said, and also Brent. Early on, when we were meeting in the Public Advisory Committee, there was an extreme reluctance to even deal with schools. And myself and Vicky Catrano, we kind of beat them over the head to finally include it. Because what we said was, and it is true, and it's what Hiruy has just said, people come here because of the schools. And if you don't take that into consideration when you're doing the general plan, you're only kidding yourself. And the thing that really bothers me, and that is a major flaw here, is that when you go and say that you're going to retrofit basically the county, and the only thing you're looking at is new schools, and you're not looking at existing schools, there's something radically wrong with this plan. For example, we were just told in Oakland Mills that Oakland Mills High School will not be rehabbed or replaced until 2035. That is 61 years after it was initially built. I mean, this is bonkers. Plus, we've still got the 250 trash trailers out there, as I view it. So I just kind of shake my head. I mean, Howard County is in the process of killing the golden goose, in my opinion, because you can't keep doing what we've been doing. In the school system, that's basically why people come here. And if we negate it, then everything else falls apart, at least in my opinion.
So to build on Paul's point, I am intimately familiar with his example of Oakland Mills. At the council level, we're neutral. We aren't trying to pick one school over the other. And it's difficult. A lot of parents are told, come out and advocate for your school and remove resources from this school or that school. We're trying to get everyone to have the appropriate amount of resources overall. both for capacity increases, which is in the realm of APFO, as well as sustainability, which is in the realm of renovation and remodels. But one thing, Paul, you brought up an excellent point again, and I just about screamed at the Board of Ed a few days ago. They were going over all their future plans for schools and what was getting pushed off and delayed and going into out years because of lack of money, lack of mitigation. But none of them were cognizant of the fact that all the planning that was done in those plans was just based on what's in the pipeline, not the 30 to 40,000 additional units that will be enabled as part of the general plan. So while you have a lot of angry parents protesting about individual school moves, delays, and decisions, the macro is huge. In a matter of days or weeks, we may increase the amount of load to the Howard County school system by over 40%, granted over the course of 2 decades. But they will have to grow over 40% plus all the backlogged stuff they had in the queue and insufficient mitigation to handle it. And you got all the ingredients for you can guess. Reductions in service, potentially shifts to charter schools, private schools, parochial. Not that they're bad, but the fact that we have a quality world-class school system and it's teetering right now, we should see the signs and head it off at the pass. And it takes groups like you to look at these big picture things and communicate well to the community. And I wish I had more resources to do that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the panelists for your very detailed answers. So this is a question to Paul specifically, but if you guys know anything, you can chime in. So Paul, what was the process of creating the general plan, and what was it like to work with lots of people and like some influences that were involved in the decision-making process? Like, how did everything get decided upon to be added to the general plan?
Well, we had some, I believe, 35 people on this public advisory committee, and council members and others picked people to appoint to this advisory committee. However, the thing that really bothered me from the first meeting on was the comment made by Amy Gowan, who was then the director of planning and zoning. And she repeated this at every single meeting. You can advise, but you can try to make recommendations. Well, we're not obligated to take any of this. And that was really true, because they did not take many of our recommendations. And I got the feeling after the first couple meetings that the county was just ticking the boxes for public participation and was not interested in changing where it was coming from. I mean, there's Excel spreadsheets, there's all kinds of information on public participation. But when you take a look at where they initially started to where they are today, there's no real difference, in my opinion. So that's the frustration that I experienced being on this public advisory committee. There's only one exception to that, and that was we finally got the schools to be addressed, but even that was only partially effective because it only deals with new schools and not the existing system.
Would you like us to answer that
That is
question or
very
go to the next one?
unfortunate to hear. Oh, yeah. No. You can answer that question.
I'll throw out real quick, and I could go on and on with the horror stories, which you guys can see just by watching the meetings. I was appointed to the Housing Affordability Task Force, not because they loved my opinion, but because I was a representative of the PTA Council. And I had one particular member spend most of their time trying to characterize me as a racist. Upon a little bit of research, found out that particular member was actually a hired consultant that specializes in dealing with community groups and dissuading them from their positions. What do you know? We had a paid consultant on our own general plan who was literally tasked with diffusing the PTA. That is indicative of what you're seeing here. When I was on an APFO task force years ago, it was mostly developers or people loyal to developers. Every vote, every decision was obviously leaning a certain direction. But to Paul's extent, a lot of the outcome of this general plan has been predetermined. Like I said, when I was on Housing Opportunities Task Force, I'm an engineer by trade. I go, what's our objective? What percentage of affordable housing at what rate? What is our measurable statistics? The answer was unlimited. We just want more. So our technical, engineered, planned, community-driven, socially responsible plan here is basically based on very wide open, unscientific principles of we want everything we can possibly get. And it's created a lot of conflict between various entities. The school system naturally has the biggest pockets, so they're the ones most affected. But fire, police, parks, water, sewer, all that good stuff are also affected by the kind of predetermined outcomes of some of this legislation that's proposed. And I would like to conclude with some of the words Paul mentioned. You ever watch the old Conjunction Junction, ABC Schoolhouse Rock? Ands, ors, ifs, buts. The entire plan, when they're supporting something, consists of shalls and wills and mandated items. And items they don't support, much like APFO, shoulds, coulds, might, very non-binding language, which is going to carry forward into comp zoning and future legislation. They will go to the general plan, and that will be the holy grail of, well, what did the founding fathers say we should do? And the authoring of this is going to greatly affect the quality of Howard County for decades to come. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you know,
Thank you.
many
Okay.
many on
So I know.
just wanted there. I think there might be a delay here. So just wanted to add to this to the discussion that I think many on here probably know, but the public process in Howard County is, really just is broken. It's very troubling. If I recall, Paul, and after the initial group of advisory people were chosen, some members of the county council had to request that representatives were added to talk, to address schools. So initially, the group did not even include people who advocates on for the school system. So yeah, like a lot of almost everything that was ultimately published was pretty much predetermined by whether it's the Department of Planning and Zoning or the developers. So this was perfunctory, just checkbox. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew what they wanted to do 10 years ago. So this was just there was a law that says you have to have a public process. That's all. So it's very troubling that we're just here, we're the taxpayers, we're the citizens, but you know, our viewpoints are not taken, you know, at all, and you know, we should be outraged that this is happening. It's a
Okay, so here is the next question. Do you think that HoCo by design is salvageable in the first place? And if so, what amendments do you think should be added to make sure that it's not just
I think we lost you.
wait, did you hear what I asked,
We,
or
we,
should
we
I
heard
repeat
most
the
of it.
question?
We heard most of it
Oh, okay.
except for you know, can it be amended to make sure that it's not just blank, probably
Yeah,
developer or something.
yeah.
My
That's
own
basically what
opinion
I said.
is that we should be ratcheting down what should be built over the next 10 years. These 10 years should be catch-up years for the school system, for our infrastructure. Like Brent, I'm an engineer, I'm a civil engineer. I've done water, roads, sewers. I know what the issues are. And you know, they're talking about, well, we need more dense development. Well, that's all well and good if you expand your sewer treatment plant, if you expand your roads. I mean, there's all kinds of knock-on effects that are needed. And it's all being done in the name of affordable housing, which I take issue with. I really dislike the term because it's like mom and apple pie. Excuse me, mom. But the fact of the matter is that affordable housing cannot be built in this county unless there's a different approach taken. And that is, and I look at it from a developer's standpoint. The highest cost to a developer is land, and land costs are really high here. And, you know, unless you write down the cost of land so that you can then build something that is affordable, it just is not going to happen. My daughter lives in Australia. I've been in Australia for extended periods and taken a look at their affordability issue. And in the area that she lives, they've been trying to do the same thing that's being sold to us. That is, if we get more dense development, then housing costs will go down. Well, they've been doing it for 10 years where she lives. And guess what? Housing costs haven't gone down. Instead, you get more dense housing and housing costs still keep going up. So, you know, from my standpoint, we should be looking at 10 years of trying to figure out how we maintain our quality of life in Howard County. And yeah, we should look forward to the future, but you know, you just can't do growth for the sake of growth, and that's what's happening here, at least in my opinion. Thank you.
So I'd like to actually answer the question, but Paul has a rabbit hole for me to go down, which is, can it be salvaged? It actually has to be. Maryland Department of Planning requires one every decade. The question is, does it need to be 300 pages of vague references? No. Does it? And honestly, the most important thing is, what is it, section 11, I believe? The implementation matters. That's where the rubber meets the roads, and there's specific recommendations that need to be made. And yes, almost every one of them has to be amended if it has a negative effect. And obviously, if they're a positive effect, we can skip over a few. And there are a few good ones, but they're few and far between. This is a developer plan for developers in the majority, not a plan of how to make all the pieces of a community work together. Look at their fire plan within there. They point where the stations are, and that's about it. No comprehensive plan of metrics and things going forward. To Paul's comment about affordability, you have probably noticed the Maryland home builders have not been testifying or present at any of the late hearings, and they are omnipresent during things like this. This affects their bottom line. However, the affordable housing advocates have been brought out, and they're doing the primary championing. And what's unfortunate is most of affordable housing is split into two types. You have your inclusionary housing, which comes as a byproduct of any growth that occurs, which should be regulated to whatever metrics we're trying to do. And then you have the special projects, the ones that are federally funded and maybe 60-40 and all that, like the Roslyn Rises. Those are unique. And that's really, they're saying if you want more Roslyn Rises, you need to open the floodgates to everything else, wide open zoning for everything. Not necessary. And we need to make sure we set good objectives for those special projects too. Because as the PTAs are concerned and many other community members, we had a big debate over concentrations of poverty. So obviously it's easier to build lots of low-income housing where land prices are low and markets are accommodating, but that may not be what we want if we want a very diverse community where people can live at different pay grades in different parts of the county. And 90% of their market should be in that inclusive area. That's where the action is occurring, where the special projects are kind of unique, and we need to watch at how we deploy them so that they meet a larger term goal that we're trying to achieve. And I could go on forever again, but I'll cut at that point. Thank you.
So I think the first thing that the plan should do is stop assuming that residential development pays for itself. The fiscal impact analysis needs to be drastically changed to reflect that ultimately the general fund, or like the county's budget will be will have a deficit due to residential development. And that at least that would be a good starting point. The next thing is to reduce significantly the projected number of residential developments that will be built annually, and at the same time require by law that every residential development project should have an affordable housing component, and not just it should be tied. There should be specific measures of affordability that says X people with X income should be able to live in that project. And then the other thing is this push for more rental housing. The county is sort of the plan calls for significantly more rental housing, disproportionately more rental housing, and every community will have its need for rental housing, but the way that the plan does it is more disproportionately rental housing. And so it should encourage home ownership rather than rental housing, because the benefits, the equity of rental housing, especially in these massive developments, goes to the large corporate property owners. So that's not good. Also, the plan should have a way to address the deferred maintenance for the school system. I think it's at least over $1 billion right now. That's excluding the school trailers that need to be decommissioned, which are a health hazard for many reasons. So those things should be addressed in the plan, and also a way to find sites for future schools. Having said that, I don't have a lot of confidence that these amendments, these common sense changes will be implemented, because the county council has two sensible elected officials and three largely pro-developer council members, and they will most likely vote with the county executive on the general plan. So what I would add is maybe going forward to think about how we can perhaps get a the county executive's office is the most powerful office in Howard County, and he or she he has a huge influence in changing this plan, I think, or the implementation of this plan. And so if we have someone that is a progressive, or if we have someone who is for accountability and for transparency and for responsible development, then they could have a huge impact on how this general plan would be implemented. So I think we should all think about how we can recruit someone who could do that. And there are a couple of council members in the county council who have been doing a good job of that. So I would think about encouraging one of them to consider competing in 2026.
Hey, that's awesome. So I actually had two questions in mind, but I'm thinking that I'll ask both of them, and you guys can decide which one you want to go more in depth in. So the first one is that I've heard lots of supporters of the general plan testify with very similar talking points. You guys really addressed the housing affordability myth really well, but I was wondering if you could touch on the vilification of APFO and how these misleading talking points are spread in the first place. And the final question that I planned was for those who are unfamiliar with the general plan but are interested in testifying at the next hearing, what would you recommend testifying on?
Those are two big topics. This general plan would like to do away with APFO. In my opinion, that would be a major mistake. The knock-on effects after the general plan is doing rezoning and APFO. Those are the two things that come in sequence after this. I think there's going to be a real fight on rezoning. And I think it's going to take place particularly in Columbia, because Columbia has what's called floating zones, and they also have covenants. And I think because of that combination, it will be difficult, if not impossible, for the county to do anything with Columbia. And that's where the majority of this densification is being proposed to be done. So, that's kind of my final thoughts on this. I just don't, there's going to be some real big issues that people have not really thought through. Rezoning for Columbia, this is the first time it's even being looked at. The Newtown zone, or the 14,000 acres that Rouse did, has been basically left alone in each general plan. It was just incorporated by reference. And it has to be also incorporated by reference here, because that is what the plan is and what's existing for it right now, at least in my opinion. So, you know, time will tell where we go from here. But it's going to be a real bumpy ride. And I just would like to see the number of dwelling units proposed ratcheted back enormously. Thank you.
There are so many topics to cover, but Paul just touched on a very critically important item that I don't think anybody's tracking except possibly Deb Young, who mentioned it in passing in a 4-hour meeting several months ago, where she reminded us that the general plan is not just the PDF that you see when you click on HoCo by Design. It is also the Housing Opportunities Task Force Plan. And it is also, drum roll please, the complete redo of the zoning of Howard County. There was an effort several years ago to rewrite all the zoning regs. They went through that and it didn't have enough popularity to pass. And then it's just literally getting slipped in as an appendix to this general plan. And once it passes the council, guess what? We just rezoned the entire county without a single public hearing or notice. And I could count on my hand the number of people who've actually read those regulations and have an idea what's coming down the pike. And I apologize, I do want to answer your question. The vilification of APFO, well, I'm kind of the personification of it, so I must be one of the bigger villains in Howard County. But it is what it is. It's an required regulation in the state of Maryland. You know, Montgomery County has it, Frederick County has it, Anne Arundel, Carroll County. So we aren't alone. It's just how local jurisdictions deploy it. And you can include fire, police, anything that's a capital project, you could assess, mitigate, and control growth using that mechanism. And that goes completely counter to the National Home Builders mission. And to a lesser extent, the affordable housing advocates, bless their hearts, they mean very well, but they are developers of a different breed. They develop housing and their profit centers less from the market and more from federal and local subsidies. Once again, that inclusionary housing is a lot better solution to a lot of this. But at the moment, anything that could impede their project even by $5 or 5 minutes is worthy of bringing out people in force who are paid, honestly, to come and do this. We're volunteers trying to fight for the quality of our school system, parks, water, sewer, public safety, and getting our labels. You're a NIMBY, you're a horrible person. But quite honestly, anybody who stands in their backyard and defends it from drug dealers or people throwing trash out or doing something horrible to the environment is a good NIMBY, a quality person you want in your neighborhood. So wear that title with pride. It's people who care about their neighborhoods. And we do care, and this is why we're active and involved in this at such a broad level. And I apologize, that was a 2-part question. I do want to answer all your questions. What was the second one again?
We're like very tight on time, but the
I'll leave it
question
at that.
is, yeah, what would you recommend others to testify on? And if Hiruy, you have like a quick response, that would be good.
Yeah, so I think I wanted to touch on the affordable housing vilification, and so I would say there are two two groups of people advocating on affordable housing. One is the professional advocates, you know, who are paid, you know, and work for the nonprofit industrial complex, and then the other group are just regular community advocates. And I was there when a lot of the testimony during a lot of the testimony for APFO in 2018, and I remember a lot of the people who are vilifying APFO now were testifying in support of APFO in 2018. And the only difference, or in 2017, and the only difference between now and then is that then the county executive, now he was running for county executive. And now that he's elected, I think the direction is that vilify APFO because you know, we have a certain agenda. So I think, you know, I'm more so there's a reason why it's been vilified by and you know, based on who the interest group is, and so the professional advocates, I think, you know, they benefit from it, from dismantling APFO financially, because it helps the developers make more money, while you know, because they use taxpayer dollars to finance a lot of their projects. So that's I think why, you know, it happens. And as Brent mentioned, you know, this idea that NIMBY versus YIMBY, it's, you know, it's a horrible you know, framing. And I think ultimately it's about you know, quality infrastructure and putting actual laws in place to make housing affordable, rather than just trying to address it using supply side economics.
Yep. Okay. So, and let's now move into.
We
Sarah?
lost you again.
I think we lost Sarah. I just wanted to make sure that people, and it's in the chat, that the general plan meeting is on September 20th at 7. You can sign up. There's a link there if you want to sign up to testify in person. You could also just write written testimony, but this sort of thing is extremely important for people to get involved, especially residents who want to maintain the quality of life that they have in Columbia, support our schools, which we know oftentimes are overcrowded with tons of portables behind them, instead of actual classrooms for our kids. So I just wanted to add that. And also
let me comment on the 20th. That was supposed to be a comment period on amendments being proposed by council members. Both Hiruy and I are on the Howard County Citizens Association. We've sent in email stating that, you know, that is what was supposed to be happening on the 20th. Yet there are no amendments that have been filed by any of the council members. So we don't know whether amendments are going to go forward and be voted on by the council without any public comment period at all.
Paul, can I add to that? I watched the last hearing meeting where the final 10 minutes was an argument over this. And some council members were concerned that they're allowing the public to comment on what they want in amendments, but they will not be able to comment once they submit their amendments.
Right.
Some of the debate was whether to have a second public hearing. Keep your ears peeled for that. And some of the debate was, no, we do this all the time. Why would we do it any different? If we create some amendments, people can write to us or make a movie if they want, but we don't need to see them here. So obviously differing opinions from differing council members, but as of today, you have a opportunity to comment on what amendments you'd like, but you won't know what was actually created until they get pre-filed. And then your only opportunity, unless something changes, will be written comment to the council from there.
Thank you for clarifying. That's really.
Okay, so if anyone has questions, thank you to all of your.
Looks like Jake has got his hand
Wait,
up.
Kat,
Cool. Yeah, sorry, I think there's a little lag there. But yeah, thank you. In case people missed it, Sarah's saying, it's a Q&A session, audience Q&A session. But yeah, I have a question for the panelists. So Brent and Brent, you mentioned an interesting comment. You said, some of these people who are sort of towing the developer line at these public hearings for the general plan, you said some of them are paid to be there. Could you guys, and I think, one of Sarah's questions earlier that got cut off from the lag was she was saying, why does it seem like some of these talking points are coordinated? Where is that coming from? And so could you guys maybe touch on that a little bit more?
Well, I could throw in working for an intelligence agency. You would think I would know everything about what's going on, but you find out through various sources. But there are many things. The school bus fiasco started with the whoever recommended the low cost, no cost option. Nobody's fessing up, but if you walk backward long enough, eventually you find that and you find the root cause for some of these things. Much the same for the housing advocates. When they come up with the same talking points, frequently all you got to do is Google it, and it comes right off the National Association of Home Builders page, or their respective organizations as nonprofit, and they have pre-prepared talking points nationwide, and some local where they're coaxed by various land attorneys that we all know and love, and know the environment very well. And the talking points. Hey, development brings in revenue. And then they stop. That's a trick. Okay, you don't get to finish the sentence. It brings in revenue, but it also brings in expenses. I will say one other entity that very few people recognize. You have the political layers, but you also have the political action committees, and they're very easy to track and who donates to them and monies. And when you see the political action committees with a platform and common talking points, and you see all their contributors matching, it's pretty easy to see where the root of some of those come from too. But ultimately, like I said, this is a development plan for developers. And if you're looking for the root of many of the talking points, they come straight from the local, state, and national entities of the national home builders and the various partners that they have.
I would agree to what Brent is saying. People are paid to put these talking points together, and the NAHB, or National Association of Home Builders, is very well organized at all levels of government, because they know that land use is basically a local decision, and they will do anything and everything to make sure that it goes in their favor.
It is getting rather late, and I'm just going to interrupt everyone and thank all of you very, very much for being on this panel, and thank Sarah for moderating this panel. You have a lot of dates coming up. Watch for those, and we'll be sending stuff out. Our next meeting, October 9th, again about healthcare with Mark Dudzik. Very, very informative. Jake, do you have anything else to add?
I think, Hiruy, were you going to give an answer at the end there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies.
Just really quickly, so you have a lot of the nonprofit employees. I think the biggest entity who is the most organized financially and is doing a lot of damage is Department of Planning and Zoning. And so, you know, all there, of course, yeah, like the, you know, the nonprofit employees, you know, they're paid to be there, they're testifying and, you know, using affordable housing as a wedge issue. But, you know, the way I actually say it is they're using our taxpayer dollars to organize against us. And is the Department of Planning and Zoning and, you know, just basically the county. The county, who is holding these meetings on a daily basis? Who's running them? Who's paying the consultants to develop these plans? It's the county. So that's who I think we should be really wary about. Is very alarming. We're literally, you know, it's just community advocates just doing this for free that are out there fighting this, and so that's.
Well,
Thank
thank
you. Sorry for interrupting, but lots of thoughts for us, and please join our chapter. We would love to send out these events and these meetings so that you'll be aware when they're coming up, and also check our Facebook page as well, or if you prefer Twitter, we'll be posting on there as well.